Welcome to Functional Medicine for Real-World Impact, where we're diving into the complex, interconnected nature of health and disease, exploring not just theory, but practically what it takes to turn functional medicine insight into powerful, practical, real-world results. So please hit subscribe and let's get started. Hello, and welcome to Functional Medicine for Real-World Impact. I am your host, Tracy Harrison, founder of the School of Applied Functional Medicine. And today I have the pleasure and the privilege once again of interviewing another wildly successful practitioner. Today I'm pleased to be joined by Julia Martin, who has been studying and applying the principles and the science of functional medicine for a while now. And I asked Julia to come onto our podcast in order to tell us the story of her journey and what type of challenges and learning, what inspiration and insights she's gained in her practitioner journey of embracing functional medicine and applying it into her practice in order to help her to give her greatest impact. So I want to welcome you, Julia, and thank you so much for being here today. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me, Tracy.
I am excited for our listeners to hear your story because you have a rich journey, right? In terms of your initial training and what you've learned over the years and how you found your expertise. But before we dive into that, maybe you can just give us a brief introduction of who you are and what type of practice you have today.
Yeah, sure. I have founded what we call the Eczema program. So it's a health coaching, wellness coaching practice, mainly focused on eczema. I'm originally a German MD and left Germany to be with the love of my life here in the US, not for my career. We had a baby much faster than we planned. And it was, we were trying to figure out, how we're going to do this. And I learned about functional medicine. And so this is how I went into functional medicine from being in the very conventional field originally. So now I'm fully invested into helping people in the functional medicine way. I'm also a mom, which is kind of important.
Very importantly.
Very.
And you have a few kids, yes?
I do. I have 2 that I made and 2 that I got as bonus kids. So 4 total. Busy life.
Indeed, very busy life. And as you just well said, your life journey, including your career, has definitely taken you on a few twists and turns. And I'd love for you to share a bit about critical turning points or aha experiences that you have had in getting you from where you started to where you are now, because you began in fairly traditional, conventional practice, yes?
Yes, correct. So I had eczema my whole life, pretty much according to my mom, from almost birth on, like a little bit later it started. And it was never crazy severe, but it was always severe enough to really change how I had to live. Like there was always lots of different things to consider, what to eat, I knew what triggered me and so forth. So it was like really impacting my life. There were other health challenges on the way that kind of added to the burden. And my parents are very holistic in their mindset. So they kind of treated me as their guinea pig to not meaning to, but it was like, okay, try this, try that. And it was very overwhelming sometimes. So at some point I decided to go into medicine and not actually be a guinea pig, but to follow the science and to, learn how it's really done. And being in Germany, the system is quite a bit different there. I had to wait a little bit. I became something between an EMT and a paramedic first, 6.5, almost 7 years of German med school. That's how that goes. I was done, graduated, was a licensed physician, was so excited. And like none of the things I had learned actually worked for my eczema. Like it's a little different in Germany, but you basically can write your own script when you're a licensed doctor, and you're like, okay, well now I'm going to try this, and then you try that, and it's all suppression. Like I didn't know then. I'm like, okay, well, I mean, I kind of knew, but not. I thought, okay, it's going to get controlled and good, but it always came back and back and back with anything. It was scary. There were other things that were going on. I had lots of other like mini but pretty impactful chronic troubles with seasonal depression and lots of nuggets in the little extra diagnoses, really, like chronic UTIs. It was so frustrating all and really hurtful or painful for me. But then I moved at some point and made that big jump and moved at the time actually to Hawaii. And we lived there and became a stepmom, and like it was a huge endeavor. And my eczema went with all the changes and excitement and stress too. Like it was very stressful. And I thought, okay, I'm going to go into, my normal field again, family medicine it would have been, and try to get that all aligned. Then I had a baby really quickly there. And it was like, okay, well, if I do this, there's only, I think at the time there were 3 slots for family medicine. I had to be a resident again. And I'm like, okay, well, how do I get into that and learn, okay, 60 to 80 hours in residency. I'm going to be away from my kiddo. Like that's a newborn I'm nursing. That's not going to happen. So it was put on ice for some time. And my eczema journey kind of, was still going. I was trying little things, but like none of that really did much. And I learned from somebody else about functional medicine and I had never heard of it. And I Googled and like looked it up and came across Mark Hyman. And then after more research, I came across you and listened to you and had so many aha moments listening to how you would put things together. And I feel like that's what I still say all the time. Like you ask the right questions, much more convincing. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like she's thinking like I think, but I never get answers. And it was just the most inspiring. And like you explained something about food sensitivities that had been on my mind before, but we learned that they are not valid. And it made so much sense because we all learned in med school, you learn about complement activation, but I had never put that together. And like, I'm like, oh my gosh, well, maybe those odd IgGs, if they also activate the complement system, which we did not learn that that's connected, maybe that's what makes them so dangerous sometimes, but not all the time, like where you actually flare so much. So like, that was one of the first like little aha moments. And I learned what I was sensitive to, took them out, and my eczema was like, I'm 75% better within 2 weeks. I'm like, what? How did I not know this? I'm a freaking doctor. Like, that's crazy.
Well,
right?
And to your point, how amazing to have this kind of brewing awareness process intellectually, but also having this visceral health experience yourself and seeing it in action. That's awesome. Good for you.
At the time, it felt like I'm climbing a mountain. It felt like I'm just not going to get rid of it. Like it would be a little bit better if I was in the ocean. It was a little bit better if I was spending a lot of time in the sun, and then it would come back. So like that was, it was so like to get little nuggets from like what is maybe there that I simply have not learned. It's so much work to become an MD. Like it was the craziest project I had taken on to that point. And you're done and you think, you've learned so much. We all come out of med school graduating slightly arrogant because you have done so much stuff. And then you realize, okay, you really don't know much at all. Like you can't really utilize it. It was so obnoxious. Like it was so sad, really. And I got stuck and hooked and signed up for SIFM. That's when I learned so much. And while I was studying and going through, was really actually the first half mainly, where I just implemented everything, like every nugget I learned, and changed my lifestyle, my diet, my supplements. I started testing. But it was like, that was the foundation. And I got better and better. And I had setbacks and then learned more. And was like, holy cow, talked to my mom. Like, was that true? Was that like that when I was little? Yeah, it was like that. Did you have any of this? Yeah, I did. Oh my God. And then, like it was like this, your mapping that you taught us, like that's what I did for myself the whole time. And was like, man, there's another nugget. There's another thing. Like it was just growing and I understood more, felt like I had literally everything you ever talked about, kind of a med school student problem anyway. And then, but I could also cross some things out, and the picture grew, and well, it took some time, but the eczema left completely. It was awesome. So like that's
how galvanizing, right? I mean,
yeah.
that's, I think, I think as you would agree, a lot of practitioners have their own kind of personal health journey, maybe for themselves, maybe for a loved one, but so empowering to see, right, the actual impact. And it's so galvanizing for people to experience that kind of transformative health change themselves personally, just as a human being, right? A mom, a dad, a friend, a spouse. I really appreciate you sharing that story because it was a long time in coming for you.
Very true. Very true. Yeah. And still is. I mean, then you learn so much more. That was, like I said, that was the foundation. Then I learned so much more, and learned that even when the skin is good, it doesn't mean we're, cured forever. There's no curing. You can just slowly move into that direction. And so I learned so many more things that were maybe not as imbalanced as I then actually thought. And so it keeps on going, and well, knowledge hopefully growing. And I feel like with every client I learn more. There's more detail. There are more things that I never experienced myself that I'm now kind of experiencing through, indirectly through client journeys, where it's like, oh my gosh, that can also be connected. Like there's so much stuff that can fill up what I call our inflammation bucket. I feel like that's the easiest way to always put it. Like there's so much stuff that can, pardon my French, but piss off our immune system. And it reacts to the sum of all things. And I have learned a lot of things that can aggravate it. And there's a lot of different, knowledge pieces that can still be added to, well, the bucket or the possibilities of bucket fillers, and make us all either overflow and then we see it as symptoms, or just slowly pile up and we don't know yet. Right.
Absolutely. And you mentioned something a few moments ago that I think is so important and part of the journey for a lot of practitioners. You're talking about your frustration, right? After you completed your medical degree, in terms of feeling like I have so much knowledge, right? I've learned so much. I have credentials, but the difference between knowledge and capability, and being able to do, right? Being able to have an impact, the impact that you envisioned. And it sounds like that was a key part of inspiration for you on wanting to make a change, not only in your own health, but in how you practiced.
Yeah, very much. That's actually true for both. I don't want to say sides, but like for both paths, in the conventional medicine way, and then also on the holistic side. So I felt like that in conventional medicine. Honestly, all my colleagues felt like that. Like we all were like, okay, now we know all of this, and then how do we use it? And in German med school, you have a lot of practical training, or in comparison, still not enough, but like quite a bit. The last year is a purely practical year where you work as a doctor and are like thrown into everything. And you really realize how little you know, like just exactly what you were saying. Like you can't use your knowledge. Like you don't know how to use it. You understand some concepts and that's awesome. And you find them in patient situations and it's, fascinating, but you can't actually, you don't know how to prescribe anything. You don't, like all the things that you do in conventional medicine, like you can't actually utilize well. And so that kind of happens over the specialization. Again, the path is a little bit different in Germany than here, but like similar. In holistic care, I actually learned, I had a dear friend who went through a different functional medicine track later on. We had a lot of exchange of like how we go about things. And I had the same experience a little bit, that it's just like you learn the concepts. And then the hard part is that you want to apply it, right? And I got lucky that I ran into your way of looking at things early on. My friend didn't. And there's a huge difference in how we can be taught to think or ask the right questions in functional medicine as well, so that we actually go towards, okay, how do we, like, we have to first understand the concept and like, create the map or the puzzle piece of whatever is most likely adding to that particular person's situation and maybe misery or symptoms, right? And then we have to learn all the tools in holistic care too, of how to rebalance these things and the order of those things. Like, how do we go about that now? Like, we know there's like 20 things that need optimizing. And then how do we get there? And like, what order do we choose from? And I feel the need to share that when I started, I had so much relief because you were so practical about it. Now I have found my own way with things. So like I tweak them and like make them my own, but it helped so much that you were very like hands on with your recommendations of like, you look for that. And then if you find that, think it through. Does it fit to the rest? And then this is how you can get started. Reading through the treasure chest, just reading through the thought process of you and then some of the team members as well to like how to deal with a situation, like how to, like just to get started. Like you often, when you're a starting practitioner, the practicality of it is, you know, the hardest part to actually like, just like in conventional care, like you need, like you said, you know, you need to swim, like you need swimming practice. You need to be jumping in the deep end and kind of get swimming, because if you don't do that, you don't think it through, you don't gain experience. And it's kind of rough. It brings slight arrogance when you've managed to get that degree. And I felt like, okay, well, I understand that part. Like if I now learn the holistic version of it, then, you know, I can do it. And I ran into some walls and had to thankfully, hopefully get rid of some of that arrogance, like where it's just like, okay, well, you really don't know. There's so much interconnectivity. I think it almost went to the other way in between, where it was like slightly feeling like an imposter syndrome situation where I'm like, oh my gosh, like I don't know nothing. Like it's crazy overwhelming. There's so many possibilities. And then you sort through it and it kind of, you know, your growing curve is like this, like where you kind of realize, okay, I do know quite a bit. Like, okay, I can handle all these situations. And when there's question marks, I go back to SFM and then look, what would Tracy do? And then I maybe read through a few articles of yours in the treasure chest and I'm like, okay, I haven't really thought about that. And then go back maybe to what I have already. And so I feel like you swim and then you learn and then maybe drown a little and then come back up. You know, it's an amazing journey though. Like I feel the practicality of it was what made it so possible for me to actually do what I do now. I know people and my friend as well, they were not so close anymore, but like at the time, like it hurt my heart. She's had spent so much money on her education. She is a PA, and it was, again, not through you, it was through a different functional medicine path, and she didn't use it. You know, she felt like she can't utilize it. How? She's like, and she was in practice. So my benefit kind of was that I was not in Germany, not using, I wasn't working under my license. I wasn't using my license. I was doing this new coaching thing. So I didn't have that, you know, possibility anyway here, at least if I was going to stay here. And that kind of helped almost because I had to swim. Like if I was going to do this, I had to do that. But she never went into it. Like she learned all that and is not using it. So I feel like this is so good. Yeah.
Well, and first of all, thank you for your warm words. I really appreciate that. And I just want to affirm what you're saying, though, about your friend. It's something that really inspired the whole creation of SAFM, which was almost 15 years ago now. But this notion that a passionate, intelligent, committed practitioner can invest in a lot of education, but still not feel or be capable and confident to actually use it in practice. And honestly, I created SAFM way back when because of my own functional medicine education, which was loaded with science, but not at all loaded with the practical education around how do you apply that science. And that's actually why the word applied is in the SAFM title, because my experience over the years is that it makes all the difference. You can learn intellectually about a lot of things, but that's not going to make you capable. And there are skills and tools and approaches that go way beyond the science that you need to know in terms of feeling confident, feeling capable, being able to do the work and actually help people to transcend disease or prevent disease and have durable results, which is ultimately why I think we're all doing this work, right? I mean, of course, we want abundant careers. We want to have great incomes, great career sustainability. We want our hearts to be uplifted in the work we do. But we really want to help to improve the quality of lives. And so I appreciate that affirmation of essentially why SAFM exists, to provide not only the science, but also that clinical application training. And then to your point, lots and lots and lots of case practice, actually using what's been learned. So I really appreciate that, because I don't want practitioners to invest a lot in scientific education, but then not have it have a massive impact on their own lives as well as the impact of others. And I appreciate you highlighting that difference. And I love that you've been able to embrace that, for yourself. I want to ask you about eczema, right? Because, I agree 100% that eventually choosing a good niche, a true area of expertise to develop and then share is a powerful way to build a very successful practice, and a very fulfilling practice. And eczema is obviously an expertise of yours that you've benefited from personally as well. What would you share about eczema in particular with other practitioners, in terms of under discussed or misunderstood aspects of working with patients and clients who have eczema? Are there a few tips or principles that you would share in that vein?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, there's the big concept, I think, to just kind of first, that's actually what I do my best to teach my clients as well, that whenever we're dealing with any atopic trouble, may that be just the allergies, may that be more on the airway asthma side, or may that be the skin side, or all three of them, there's always an extra activation of the immune system as a base. So I call that the overflowing inflammation bucket, because I feel like that's a really good picture to wrap our brain around. And there's many different parts usually that fill up our bucket. And our buckets are also not all the same size. So depending on our genetic makeup, some of our buckets are bigger, some are smaller, and we might see quicker symptoms, maybe later symptoms, but we all carry that bucket to some degree, no matter actually if we have eczema or atopic disease or anything, or we're prone to something totally different. But when the bucket is overflowing of many things that aggravate our immune system, most of the time there will be symptoms at some point, just depending on what's all in there. And so looking at the different fillers is a good way of learning, okay, how can we hopefully nudge the immune system to more peace? And so within that bucket, there's lots of, I feel like there's a hierarchy. There's a lower part of the bucket, which many of us call root causes, right? Like where there's like bigger things filling up the bucket to some level already. And then there's an like more surface level part where we can have more short-term aggravating factors that can really make our bucket overflow as well, but they are not as hard to manage, or they're sometimes consequences of those deeper root causes. So I try as much as I can to help people first understand the superficial parts so that they can manage their ongoing situation as quick as possible into like just relief, bring a little bit of, as you call it, rapid relief, right? And then on the bottom, the deeper root causes usually take time and work to rebalance and get better and better and better. Many of those root causes I find are actual requirements to really get better. So gut health, for example, like is to me like a basic requirement. For many is like the only work that needs to be done for eczema. I really don't agree. I think it's a basic requirement to have pretty good gut health, to have a calm immune system for anybody really, and especially for eczema, of course. And so we're working on that always. We're always working on nutrient or on good nutrient levels, I should say, like that we don't deal with deficiencies, even the tiny ones, like that we just really allow the cells to have hopefully as much available of the nutrients they need to run their biochemistry. And then like the other bigger thing to start with is always what I call toxin overload. I think that's a word from you, where we're not, like we try to reduce toxin exposure, but then also work on actually getting everything out in a timely manner, that our detoxification pathways are running, our natural ones are running the whole time, for us, and not, that there is nothing clogged or in that way. So that's kind of the base. And then there's some, I feel like, hidden aspects of all of that that are not so easily to grasp. But like when we're thinking of atopic disease, that histamine overload plays a huge role. And that can be a deeper concept, like it can be a deeper part of the root cause, and it can be a superficial one, right? Like if we've become already in our past, because there was lots of leaky gut, lots of leaky skin, like all barriers in the body can be leaky. And whenever they are, the immune system is going to be on its tippy toes to make sure like not more crap is coming in. And so like just that part, like how to overcome what's already been created is sometimes really tricky, right? If somebody has had eczema like me for a long time, we often accumulate tons of allergies because we've had a leaky skin barrier. We've had leaky gut often for ages, right? And if that happens, there's going to be a long list of real allergies often, plus food sensitivities and with complement activation that actually really aggravates the immune system every time we see that. And that can happen to things. I think we're actually not having enough testing yet. Like I think that can happen to bacteria, to fungi. Like we know that, but it's not always showing up on testing because we don't have the testing yet. But there's lots of this, right? To environmental things, to things we're eating, things we're touching. Like it's so crazy. Anything, if the skin barrier becomes leaky, we're never going to find all the triggers. I feel like I have to always point that out to everyone. Everyone is trying to find, the worst trigger. And like, it's not like that, but we can find the biggest triggers and hopefully find, the first 5 to 10, maybe more, that really aggravate our immune system and go from that perspective and just try to get those out a little bit first. And then we create a little bit of a buffer zone in our bucket. And then we are able to deal a little bit more with the rest. That's also true for skin infections, right? So we deal, that's what I'm trying to say. Like we're dealing with the upper surface level fillers of the inflammation bucket first. And then we look a little bit deeper. So for histamine overload, allergies, having maybe estrogen overload. Like I have so many clients actually that are like in their midlife time of their experience here on this planet. And just like me, like going through like, perimenopausal, maybe menopausal times, and everything shifts, even when you think good things were coming, like it kind of goes like this. And maybe you didn't know that there was, some bucket fillers brewing already on that level for your estrogen balance. And then it suddenly shows really clearly. Or maybe you have a genetic makeup that got a little bit out of balance there too. Like you can dirty your genes, right? In some ways where that gets harder for you to produce the right enzymes to get rid of the estrogen. And then suddenly you're dealing with much more estrogen dominant symptoms, and the estrogen triggers the histamine again. So the, histamine overload plays a huge role, but we need to look, where is it coming from? It's not fixed by a low histamine diet and then you're done. Like you have to look, why is that? How long do you need to be on a low histamine diet? Well, till the gut can handle some histamine again, right? Till we can produce that again. So I feel like you have taught me a lot of these, like looking into the details. You always said the devil's in the detail, and it's really so true. And I feel like even with all the things I do every day, like there's always more question marks that pop up behind the next question that we answered. And that's really good. It's frustrating sometimes, but it's really good because that actually points us always into the direction where we need to investigate further and hopefully get more science to show us some, details that we can figure out just in our brain, where we actually need some data, and we don't have it for everything, but like that points into those areas. And we're learning more and more about mast cells, how when, I've had my own experience with that, several dances, actually, I really didn't like them, but with mold exposure, often acute, sometimes ongoing, and how upsetting that is to our immune system, especially to our mast cells. And then when people are dealing with that, the histamine overload becomes like through the roof, and they can be on a crazy low histamine diet and it doesn't even touch the surface level of the histamine overload, right? So they have to find a way, which I can't do for them, but they can learn and hopefully be inspired to really take charge of their home environment, to not allow there to be bigger amounts of mold growth, for example, or how we can have mast cell activation because we're hypermobile and our joints are not in the position they need to be, and like they keep stretching into funny positions, and our mast cells that sit in all connective tissue freak out every time, and we have like a surge of not just histamine but many things from those mast cells. And that's a different way. There doesn't need to be mold, but like just that can lead to more aggravation of symptoms from histamine overload. So I feel like there's all these little puzzle pieces that are in a 3D puzzle connected, and we can just slowly move through that. And I do monthly sessions now and have like a whole curriculum with like people learn everything I'm saying right now in a much more detailed way in my curriculum, so they learn it on their own. So I actually have created my own version of eczema mini SAFM, right? And they go through that so that they understand, they become their own practitioners, if you want. Like they really learn as much as they can on their own about eczema, so they don't depend on me forever. I feel like that's your inspiration too, because you were always like that. Well, you don't need to depend on me. You need to like get it all into your own thinking and then ask the right questions and go forth, right? And I feel like that's so good for clients as well. If we can empower them to learn that they can manage on their own. There's no cure for eczema. There's no cure for anything, but we can slowly nudge our body to be less inflamed, and then we don't have to deal with any curing because we're just not having any troubles or symptoms in the same degree anymore, or to the same degree anymore. So that was convoluted, but like there's so many different aspects to it, and I try to just help them understand what they look for in their own situation to optimize so that their bucket stays as empty as possible, hopefully forever.
I love that. Your passion for helping people with that particular dynamic really comes through. And also in your example, just how satisfying I think it can be to, even in a fairly tight, perceived tight niche, each person is different, right? To your point, each bucket is different in terms of what's in there that is collectively filling up their capacity for inflammation, and the sets of puzzle pieces that are involved are different for each unique person. Let me ask you a question that's going in a totally different direction, because I think given all you've shared about this rich experience, you've been running your own practice for how many years now?
Fully eczema has been officially for 3 years, but it's actually a little bit longer, with like dipping my toes in was quite a bit longer.
Sure. What do you think is one of the most poignant things you've learned about yourself in this overall journey?
Good question. That I think so. I think there's so much, honestly, to it. Like that, I first thought, I think the most important thing to me was to, I guess, really excel just in my knowledge, like to become a doctor, get that figured out, and then like do this and like have that. And then while I was growing in that, I think the priority shifted a little bit. And I was like, okay, well, I need to balance it. Like I can't, like if I enjoy it so much, I burn out. So I need to make sure that I actually prioritize also my own children, my family, my, like what fills me up besides my career and my job, which was a big driver for a long time in my life, and still is, absolutely. But it has become, I feel like, more balanced. I can now step away a little bit and like really enjoy it, and like not just, be fulfilled by the job. So I feel that was a huge shift that like took a moment to get to, with also some struggles in between, with a little bit of like the struggle of like just really realizing, okay, if I keep on going like this, that's not sustainable. Like I need to learn something. And I did, and that's actually really helped. I shifted my program, how I work. I've created that curriculum to like step away a little bit more, and people can do more on their own. We recorded everything. That was so helpful. So to have, I think that was when like I really learned, okay, what are my own needs in this? Like the need is stability, and to some degree within the job situation. That's a big tricky thing to navigate a little bit when you're starting and you don't know where it's going to go, and then you create the stability, but then it becomes also really busy. And so I feel like then making that next step to, once the stability is created of cash flow and like knowing how to deal with like what's coming in, where to delegate stuff and so forth, then to really see, okay, how much do I really want to work long term? Like how much do I want to do one-on-one clients? How much do I want to do a group program? So we've shifted. We have a membership now. We have a one-on-one coaching component that has a group component still. I feel like those things are still moving. Like there's always improvement. Like I'm learning something here, and I'm like, that I should implement that in my own practice. Like I feel like that could really help people that are working with me, and it would help me too. Like that it's, it needs, like a win-win is always the goal, that they learn more, but that it doesn't like that I don't repeat the same thing over and over again to everyone, then we can put it in the curriculum. Or that sometimes it's good to diversify. We have a new wonderful functional nutritionist on the team now that once a month does the Q&As with everyone in there. But that means that's a Friday that I can do something different. And like, that's amazing. And she can get more clients because there will be some that will also hopefully need some additional services from her. And like, what I'm trying to say is like step by step moving with the growth and like learning, okay, I need to prioritize my own well-being within what I do for my clients, but also for myself, so that I can actually do this long term. And hopefully, as long as I desire to do this, but I assume that's going to be quite long. I work with people in between like 3 months and a year, sometimes longer, depending on how they want that and how much support they want. Sometimes it goes quite beyond, and then first the mom, then the kiddo, then the grandma. Like sometimes it goes like this. That's good too. But I see lots of development sometimes over a long time span. And for them, they start at the end, I feel like, to finally ask like really the right kind of questions, deep enough, complex enough to get to the answers that they're looking for. But in the beginning, we can't even ask in that way. Not Google, not AI, not anything. I couldn't either when I started, right? But like this picture forms. And so step by step, I feel like it's so, like we just grow with each little thing and then expand it a little and go with that. And I think to your question, like what changed the most is really just the mindset over time to go with what I'm like, where I'm at, and then to expand from there and to make sure that I don't fall off my own, plate, so that I can actually do this. Like that I'm not wearing all the hats, but that I can manage it in a good way and be well while doing it.
Absolutely. You be well while doing it. That focus on making the work sustainable. I love you use the phrase of, how do I also thrive, right? In the midst of, in the process of doing the work. Let me ask you about, so inspiration to your colleagues, right? I'm sure your journey, your story is going to resonate with a lot of fellow practitioners. What would you say to a physician, a nurse practitioner, right? Someone else who is in the medical field, who is considering this route, but is questioning it. Is it realistic? Is it smart? Can I really make a good, abundant living doing this work? What would you say by way of inspiration for them?
Yeah, good question. I think what helped the most for me, and what I would also, and have actually often said to others, is to follow what really is the most exciting in your heart in whatever you're doing. So if like it's the most inspiring thing, and if something goes wrong, which it will, like that there are obstacles, like that will pull you and keep you going. If you do that for somebody else's desires, or if you follow whatever you think is right to do because that's what was told in the past, whatever it is, like we all have our reasons why we go a certain or follow a certain path. But if you make that the most the biggest draw for yourself, that you follow what's exciting and joyful, like we all know, like if we're very spiritual, if we're very religious, like we have a usually pretty good feeling of like where that comes from which place in our perception, our body, in our somewhere soul, spirit place or space. And if we follow that, I feel like nothing can really go wrong. Like we are going to be led to some degree. We are going to hear and listen to the right things. And then it'll kind of unravel itself like in front of you, step by step, with obstacles, no question. But then we have the inspiration, kind of, we carry it inside if we follow that, instead of all that, because there will be so many voices and noise and like it's hard to sometimes do that. But if we go back to that, I feel like it's so much easier, like it's so much more guided in a way than if we follow whatever maybe our absolutely wonderful parents, but like, and they are not us, right? So like if they just are saying, do this, like that has made everyone else happy, like go that way, which that's not going to do that. And hopefully they know too. But if you follow what really is like inside, that I feel like is the biggest inspiration for us. And then we can listen to the right other people's voices in a much more focused and targeted way.
I appreciate that. Well said, right? So many voices, right? What we should be doing or what we shouldn't be doing or what the right answer is. And being able to to honor what lights you up. I love that.
Mm-hmm.
If I can, I would love to end with um, just a little more inspiration around maybe a recent um, clinical insight or patient win that perhaps has recently affirmed you, right? That has brought you back to, okay, this is why I do what I do. Is there an anecdote that you would share in
Mm-hmm.
that vein?
Yeah, sure. I have many little ones. I have some big ones. I had yesterday, actually. I heard we were on the group call. So it was in the first hour with the little kids' moms, basically mainly moms. And she was sharing she had prepared for that for pretty much the whole last few months while working, that they were going to go with the whole family. She has a huge family to Disney World. Not the easiest of places to be hypoallergenic on, like complicated. And her kiddo, her little son, had been dealing with eczema almost from birth on, majorly in his face with, crusty, infected skin in between. It was like covered in eczema. Bits and pieces. I almost said like lots of little eczema patches on his body too, but not anywhere close to what his face had looked like in the past. And we had over the past few months gotten it so good. Like it was, it made my day already several times. Like it was just, she would always update me in between and on our calls, of course, but then also on the group calls in between and one-on-one calls and group calls. And so that already felt really good. But then she told me yesterday, they had just come back and it was actually very manageable there, much better than she thought. But there were some exposures that he had due to, well, there being more than 20 people all kind of holding him, feeding him in between. Like he's not anaphylactic in any way. So that's good, but also allows for people always to sneak stuff into children that they should be eating. And so some of that happened and he had a tiny little flare. And she said something yesterday on the call to me that was just heartwarming to me. She said, Julia, then he flared a little bit on the trip home and I saw it, like it started to, and it was the first time ever of his eczema journey that I didn't freak out at all. I was like, oh, I know what to do. And she just felt so empowered, she said, to like come home. She was on the way. She knew what to do with his skin on the way. And then she's like, well, and then we're home and we're going to just stay out of the trigger zone a little bit longer. We're not 100% there yet. We're doing our retesting in half a month. Like she said, she was so calm around it. Before that, she said she would have been in tears when their next flare hit. She felt like she can't do anything. It was a whole different, like, helpless situation. And then we started working together and she learned all the different details of it, of like, again, the top level management kind of, which sometimes is needed for the flares. And then like the deeper approach, where you do have to trust the process a little bit because you don't see the improvement right away from the bigger stuff. And so like, she's like in the midst of it all, but it's gotten so much better already. It's of course always inspiring to every client when we can see the improvement so much. And she said the empowerment of it all, like to not freak out anymore, to feel like we have so much more tools than I ever knew. She said it changed everything. She could like enjoy the journey despite there being a little flare. The kiddo didn't mind much anyway. And like she said it was amazing. And I think that was just so joyful to me because I went through that same journey for myself. I see it hopefully in most clients that they learn so much that they can utilize that in that way and like feel, even when they at some point graduate from the program or like decide to go on their own, that they never feel like helpless again, that they feel like even if it's something outside of eczema, like where there's other symptoms popping up, that they feel like there might be answers somewhere, like I just need to learn how to ask the right questions and look in the right direction, that I'm not stuck in some situation where I'm dependent on immune system suppressing medication, but I can actually learn things to rebalance mechanisms that are running the whole time. And hearing that yesterday from her was, it made my day.
I bet how gratifying it feels for someone to be truly empowered. That's awesome. Congratulations. I have loved this conversation in terms of an opportunity to learn more about the twisty, windy path that has brought you uniquely to um, a satisfying full practice and successful in creating really what your vision was. Congratulations on that. I wish you the best of success moving forward. And I love that you're continually evolving, right, in terms of adding new insight or expertise or components, right, of your business in order to keep it fresh. And I hope that continues to uplift you and satisfy you as a practitioner, as a woman, as a mom, as a human being. That's great.
Thank you so much, Tracy. Thank you so much. Lots of that is due to your inspiration originally, and I'll hold you right there forever and in my ear because that continues to inspire me, your words, and also your modeling exactly that.
Awesome. Thank you very much.